A woman screams for help, then a splash. Ijeoma runs toward the riverbank, her wrapper flapping wildly around her legs. She doesn't stop to think. She drops her basket, dives into the muddy water, and fights against the current with everything she has. The river is strong, angry, pulling, twisting, trying to take both of them under. But Ijeoma doesn't let go. She grabs the pregnant woman's arm, kicks hard, and with one last push, drags her to the shore. Both women collapse on the sand, gasping for air. The stranger's face is pale, terrified, but in her eyes there's something else, something heavy, something she's not saying. She whispers weakly, "You saved my life." And Ijeoma, still catching her breath, replies, "You're safe now, madam." That day, Ijeoma became a hero. But she didn't know that some rescues come with hidden deaths, and that the woman she saved from the river would soon drag her into deeper waters, waters filled with betrayal, mystery, and the truth she was never meant to uncover. It started on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning that smelled like rain even though the sky was clear. Ijeoma sat by the riverside, her wrapper tied tightly across her chest, her feet dipped in the cool brown water. She was washing a small pile of oranges and bananas to sell at the market. Her mind was heavy, and her eyes carried that quiet sadness of a woman who had learned to keep moving even when life refused to get better. She had been a widow for 5 years, ever since her husband, Chuka, died in a construction accident in Lagos. Since then, it had just been her and her 12-year-old son, Somto. They lived in a small mud house at the edge of Umuduru village. Her days were predictable. Morning prayers, walk to the river, wash fruits, sell at the roadside, return home late with a tired smile and barely enough to cook supper. That morning, though, something strange broke her routine. She heard a cry, not the sharp cry of a baby, but the deep, frightened scream of a grown woman. Ijeoma froze, her heart racing. The voice came from farther down the river, near the bend where the current was strongest. She dropped her basket and ran barefoot through the sand. When she reached the spot, she saw a heavily pregnant woman struggling in the water, her arms flailing as the current dragged her. Without thinking, Ijeoma jumped in. The river was cold, and her wrapper weighed her down, but she pushed forward. Her hands found the woman's arm, and with all her strength, she pulled until both of them rolled onto the bank, coughing and gasping for breath. The woman looked exhausted. Her fine braids were loose, her wrapper half unraveled. Ijeoma noticed her gold bracelet on her wrist, something she hadn't seen on anyone in the village before. "Madam, are you okay?" Ijeoma asked, panting. The woman nodded weakly. "God bless you. I slipped. I didn't even know the ground was that deep." "You shouldn't be walking near the edge with your condition," Ijeoma said, helping her sit up. The woman smiled faintly. "You're right. I wasn't thinking straight." Ijeoma helped her to her feet and offered to take her home to rest. The woman hesitated, then agreed. As they walked, Ijeoma noticed her shoes, fine leather sandals with golden buckles, the kind that didn't belong in a small village like Umuduru. At home, Ijeoma gave her dry clothes and hot curry water to drink. The woman introduced herself as Grace. She said she had come to the village to visit someone but got lost while trying to find a shortcut. "You're really kind," Grace said. "Most people these days just look away." Ijeoma smiled, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "If we stop helping one another, what will remain of us?" That night, Grace asked if she could sleep over and leave in the morning. Ijeoma agreed. Her son Somto seemed fascinated by the visitor, the way she spoke gently, the perfume that lingered in her clothes, the way she blessed the food before eating. But something about her didn't sit right with Ijeoma. She noticed how Grace avoided certain questions, like where she exactly came from or who she was visiting. Still, hospitality came first. For 7 days, Grace stayed. She helped Ijeoma at the market, laughed with Somto, and even fixed a torn mosquito net in their room. She promised to pay back every kindness when she got back to the city. Then, on the morning of the 8th day, Ijeoma woke up to silence. The mat where Grace had slept was empty. Her bag was gone. So was the small metal box Ijeoma used to keep her savings, the money she had been gathering for Somto's school fees. Her heart dropped. She ran outside, calling Grace's name, but only the birds answered. Neighbors gathered quickly. Some shook their heads, others laughed. Ha ha, Ijeoma, you be too kind. You go carry it stranger put for house like say this world no get wicked people. Another one added, I even tell you, your heart will land you in trouble one day. Ijeoma didn't respond. She just sat quietly, holding her empty money box. Her chest felt heavy, but her eyes stayed dry. That afternoon, she walked to the river and sat on the same spot where she had rescued Grace. God, she whispered, did I do wrong by helping her? The next days were difficult. She had no money for new fruits, so she started washing clothes for people instead. Somto grew quieter, noticing the change in her mood. One evening, after washing clothes till her hands ached, Ijeoma sat outside with her son, watching the sunset. Mama, Somto said softly, you think that woman will come back? I don't know, my son, but I just hope she's okay. I don't hate her. You don't hate her? He asked, surprised. Ijeoma smiled sadly. If I start hating people, I'll forget who I am. Life went on like that for weeks. Then, one afternoon, a black SUV rolled into the village. The sound of its tires on the dusty road turned heads. Children ran after it shouting, Big car, don't enter! Big car, don't enter! The car stopped in front of Ijeoma's compound. The door opened, and out stepped Grace, looking completely different. Her clothes were clean and stylish, her hair tied neatly, her face glowing like she had found peace. Behind her came two men in black suits, and inside the car sat another woman holding a baby. Ijeoma's mouth dried. She stood up slowly, unsure what to say. Grace walked straight to her, tears in her eyes. Ijeoma, she said softly, I've been looking for you. The whole village gathered around. Grace knelt down right there in the dust. Please forgive me, she said. I took your savings. I was desperate and confused. My husband wanted to take my baby from me. I ran away from Lagos with nothing, thinking I could start over. But when you saved me that day, I didn't even understand what you'd done for me. I was too broken. Ijeoma just stared at her, speechless. Grace continued. After I left, I went back to Lagos. My husband was arrested for fraud, and I finally got access to the company he left behind. I promised myself that the first person I would find was you. She opened a brown envelope and handed it to Ijeoma. Inside were bundles of cash, more than Ijeoma had ever seen. This is double of what I took from you. Grace said, and there's more. I want to give you a job at my supermarket in Owerri. You will have a house, salary, and your son's school fees paid. The crowd gasped. Ijeoma didn't speak immediately. Her hands trembled as she looked from the envelope to Grace's tearful face. You didn't have to come back, Ijeoma said quietly. I had to, Grace replied. If I didn't, I would never forgive myself. That was how Ijeoma's life changed. She moved to Owerri with Somto, started working in Grace's supermarket, and within months became one of the most trusted staff. She was punctual, honest, and hardworking. Grace treated her like a sister. But as time went on, Ijeoma began to notice things. Some of the goods that came into the store didn't match what was recorded. Staff whispered about bribes and extra pay from suppliers. Sometimes Grace asked her to help adjust figures so that their profit looked bigger. At first she said nothing. She needed the job. Her son had just started school. But each night, guilt pressed on her chest like a heavy stone. One evening, Grace called her into the office. Ijeoma, I need your help with something small, she said smiling. We have some goods coming in tomorrow. Just sign the wheel bill for 200 cartons, even though we are only receiving 150. I'll handle the rest. Ijeoma hesitated. Madam, that's not right. Grace leaned forward. My sister, don't be too holy. Everyone does it. Nobody will catch us. I can't do that, Ijeoma said softly. Grace's smile faded. Ijeoma, do you know how many people want your job? I brought you out of that village. You think it's by luck? Ijeoma lowered her eyes. I'm grateful, but I can't lie for you. The tension between them grew. Grace stopped talking to her like before. She gave her extra work, delayed her pay, and sometimes ignored her greetings. That week felt like walking through fire. Sumter noticed the sadness in her eyes. Mama, why don't you leave that place? He asked. Because sometimes doing the right thing is not the easy thing to do. By the 7th day of her inner struggle, Ijeoma made her decision. She went to the office early, typed a resignation letter, and left it on Grace's table. She didn't take a kobo that wasn't hers. She walked out quietly, holding Sumter's hand. That same evening, the news broke. Grace's supermarket was raided by anti-fraud officers. She had been under investigation for months. Ijeoma sat in her small rented room, trembling as she watched the news on a neighbor's TV. Grace's face filled the screen, being led away in handcuffs. A week later, Ijeoma got a letter from the company owned by Grace's husband. They wanted to see her in Lagos for an interview. She almost didn't go, thinking it was a mistake, but she went anyway. In the waiting room, a tall man approached her. You are Mrs. Ijeoma, right? Yes, she said nervously. I'm the managing director here. We've heard a lot about you. He smiled and handed her a folder. Inside was a job offer, operations supervisor, with full benefits. She blinked in confusion. Sir, I don't understand. He nodded. When we reviewed everything that happened, your name came up. Grace mentioned during interrogation that you are the only staff who refused to join her in falsifying records. We need people like you here. Tears filled her eyes. She covered her mouth, shaking her head. Integrity may look like foolishness for a while, but it always speaks in the end. That night, as Ijeoma lay on her new bed in Lagos, she thought of that river, the one where it all began, the same river where she had pulled Grace out, where she had lost her savings, where her kindness looked like stupidity. She realized then that every good act she had done, even when it hurt, had been preparing her for this moment. Sometimes the test of character doesn't come wrapped in temptation or praise. It comes quietly, in choices that no one sees. And when dawn broke the next morning, she rose early, just as she always had, ready to start again. But this time, she wasn't just walking to survive. She was walking as a woman who finally understood that the reward for doing right often comes from the least expected place. If you like our stories, please like and subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our stories. Also share with someone who needs some encouragement. Thanks so much for watching and see you in our next story.